What's up, people? Joe Winko here, your favorite Hawaiian guy, and here's my next episode of Joe Winko Talk. So, before I get to what I'm going to be talking about, I just want to let everyone know this isn't going to be a very positive episode of Joe Winko Talk. It's going to definitely be a morbid and gloomy one. Not quite about myself or anything in my life, really. Well, it does have something to do with my life a tad bit, as all my YouTube videos do. But it's gonna be a morbid and gloomy one, and quite a controversial one, too. A long time ago, I made a Sims 2 horror movie about these two serial killers on the loose in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It was called Carolina Maniacs, and it was about these guys using hammers to murder all their victims. And it was about me living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they saw my videos on YouTube, and it inspired them to become serial killers. Then they find out that I live in Charlotte, and then they try to kill me and everything, and the only one who believes me about it is my adoptive sister, Bree. I'll have a link to that video in the pinned comments for those of you guys who never seen it. But I made that video of The Sims 2 back in 2016. It was my most recent Sims 2 slasher film. Yeah, I haven't made those in a long time. The thing is, that movie was actually based off of a real life event. It didn't happen in the USA, but it happened in Ukraine. The Hammer Maniacs, aka the Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs. That's a city in Ukraine. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but there was an actual case of these two 19-year-old boys. I don't know why they decided to do this. They were obviously really sick in the head. One day back in summer of 2007, both of them got hammers and decided to go on a killing spree, and in 2 weeks they ended up murdering 21 people. They also would record videos of themselves killing their victims, and one of their videos actually leaked out. 3 guys, 1 hammer. It's not on YouTube, but if you Google search it, you will be able to find it. And just warning you guys, the video quality is really bad because it was filmed with a cell phone in year 2007. But that video was really difficult to watch. I myself actually watched it around the time when I was making Carolina Maniacs, and the thing is, I thought it was really disturbing at first. Well, I always thought it was disturbing, and I always thought it was sick and messed up. But nowadays, when I think about that video, I just think it's really sad and really horrible that these guys were evil enough to go around killing a whole bunch of people they never met before, who never done anything to them, for no reason. It was sick and it was messed up. It's obvious that they had absolutely no regard for human life. Here's a picture of what the real guys looked like, and here's a picture of what they looked like in my Sims 2 horror movie, Carolina Maniacs. Let me show it to you right now. Okay, so there they are. I'm pretty sure it's easy enough for you guys to tell which ones are the real ones and which ones were the ones for my Sims 2 horror movie. Now, the thing about it is, in real life they killed 21 people, and look what they look like in real life, and look what they look like in my Sims 2 horror movie. I was always thinking that if they would have looked like the way they did in my Sims 2 horror movie in real life, there's no way they could have killed that many people, because I actually purposely tried to make them look really scary and intimidating. And a lot of the victims were by themselves, like walking alone on the streets in real life. And a lot of the people who survived the attacks from them, because there were quite a few people who were actually attacked by these guys and actually survived. A lot of the people who were attacked, they said that they saw them walking up to them, and they just didn't think anything of it. They just thought it was two friends hanging out with each other. But if they would have looked the same way they did in my Sims 2 horror movie, Carolina Maniacs, that mean, intimidating look that you guys see that they have, I don't think they would have managed to kill that many people, because if you went out at night and saw two guys looking like that, you would be very leery of them and you would try to get away from them. That's just something that I thought with my autism mind and everything, because I sure as hell know that I would. The guys were eventually arrested and charged with all their crimes and the murders that they did and everything, exactly as they should. And I got interested in this case because how I first heard about it back in 2016 was I was watching this video on YouTube of the 10 videos online that you should never look up at all. And it was the 3 guys, 1 hammer video that they mentioned of the scary found footage. And that's what inspired the idea of Carolina Maniacs. So later on, I was reading more about the Hammer Maniacs, and I was trying to find the list of all the victims, and I did manage to find a list of their victims, some of the names. The weird thing is, the list of all the victims, it doesn't include all of their names. It only includes roughly half of the victims' names. There were 21 victims total, but they don't list all 21 of them. And I wanted to know who the rest of the victims were. I wanted to know how old they were, what they looked like, and where they were, and what they were like and everything. Because this is going to sound really weird, but I just wanted to know who they were because I didn't want them to be forgotten about at all. And I wanted to know exactly who was killed by these evil people, these 2 evil guys who just decided one day that they should snap and murder a whole bunch of people for no reason. And I wanted to know who we lost. And I wanted to see all their faces. It's kind of personal to me, really, because I post a lot of videos online, and there's many reasons why I always upload my videos onto YouTube and why I always post so much stuff on the internet about myself and everything. It's because I don't want to be forgotten about at all. I always want people to know who I was, where I was, what I did while I was here on Earth, and I never want to be forgotten about at all. That's the major reason why I post so many videos on YouTube, and I want people to get to know me. That's why I post so many videos on YouTube, because one day when I'm finally gone and not alive anymore, I want people to be able to go back and see who I was and what I did while I was here. That's why I post all my YouTube videos. Because, in all honesty, I think the saddest thing is when someone dies and they're just forgotten about and they just cease to exist. You don't know their names, you don't know what they looked like, you don't know what happened while they were here. And I find that very upsetting. That's another reason why I always do my YouTube videos of me visiting the graves all the time, because I want the people to be remembered and everything. I was actually planning on discussing that in a future episode of Joe Winko Talk. Because of that, I actually did try figuring out who the rest of the Hammer Maniac victims were. There's this website called City Data. It's like a web forum where people who live all over the USA and all over the world, really, can discuss stuff on a web forum. And it's really for all over the world, but they mainly focus on the USA. I noticed that there was a Ukraine section, too. So, since I wanted to know the rest of the victims of the Hammer Maniacs, I decided to go there and post there and ask if anyone knew who the rest of the victims of the Hammer Maniacs were. And that's where I was asking about it. And people people weren't being very polite at all when I asked about that. People were just saying, oh, just forget about it. It doesn't matter. And I got upset because of that no one was giving me answers. But it upset me that they were saying that it doesn't matter, because it does matter. These people were brutally murdered for no reason. They weren't doing anything wrong. And these two messed up guys just came in with hammers and just brutally slaughtered them for no reason. I think they deserve to be remembered. That was way back in 2016 when I tried figuring that out for the first time. And eventually I just moved on and just focused on other stuff after a while. But then later on, this one person sent me a message on Twitter. This really nice girl sent me a message on Twitter, and she said that she saw my post on City Data, and she said that she noticed that I tried asking who the victims of the Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs were. And she said that she really appreciated it that I tried asking who the victims were, and that she noticed that the feedback I got on that on City Data wasn't very helpful at all, and that people weren't trying to help me figure out who they were. And she was asking me, did I ever figure out the names of the rest of the Hammer Maniac victims? And she didn't know the names of the Hammer Maniac victims either. She wanted to know the names of them too. And I told her that I never did, and I told her I would try asking around again. I also posted on Reddit, and I figured someone would know the names of the rest of the victims on the Ukraine section of Reddit. But the thing is, the people on the Ukraine section of Reddit, they were just like the people from City Data, really. Let me read to you what the people from the Ukraine section of Reddit said to me when I tried asking what were the names of the rest of the victims from the 2007 Hammer Maniacs. Here's what they were saying. One person typed in, "No source for creepypasta here. Let them rest in peace." So what did they think I was going to do? Write a creepypasta story about all of them? Why the heck do they think that? I just wanted to know the names of the victims, and I wanted to know who they were, because they deserve to be remembered. To be completely honest, I was actually planning on kind of making a memorial for them, and with all their names on it, and with all their pictures to remember them, like something online, so they would never get forgotten. That's an idea that I had. And then one incredibly stupid person typed this comment to me. "As for me, if I was a member of victim family, I will hurt you for questions about my family. You are nobody for them." Must have been using Google Translate, but I obviously was able to tell that they weren't typing anything good. So I typed back to them, "You're almost as bad as the killers themselves then." Because they were. If they said that they would hurt me because I'm trying to figure out who their family members' names were if they were killed by the Hammer Maniacs. Then another idiot typed in, "How about no, drop it, let them be." And it kind of pissed me off that people were coming at me like that, just because I wanted to figure out the names of these people who were killed by these sick maniacs. Because I felt sorry for all of them and I wanted to memorialize all of them. There's actually this one quote that I remember hearing from a lot of people. I don't exactly remember exactly how it's worded, but I believe it goes, "Do unto others as you would unto you." As I was explaining earlier, I post all my stuff on YouTube so people remember who I am and so people know who I am. So when that one day comes when I finally die, people know what I did here and people know who I was. And if I was murdered by a psycho bastard with a hammer and the news articles were just listing me as another one of the 12 victims and weren't saying my name at all and weren't saying exactly when it happened, and if someone else, a stranger who I didn't know at all, was typing online trying to figure out my name, and a bunch of idiots were typing in "no source for creepypasta" or "how about no, drop it, let them be," I would be pretty pissed off about that, really. And I don't think it's right at all that they want to forget about these people who were brutally murdered for no reason. I want to know who these people were. I think they deserve to have their names out there, and I think they deserve to be remembered. I don't think they should just focus on the killers at all. For example, like the Parkland school shootings that happened back in February of 2018. We knew the names of everyone who died in that incident. We know who all their names were. We know how old they are. We know even some more facts about them, how good of people they were, and who we lost and everything. We didn't just list them as 18 victims. We knew who they all were. Even when people die in tornadoes, we know the names of all the victims and everything. And I just think that the victims of the Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs, I think they deserve the same recognition. What is wrong with that? So, this is where things get controversial. I thought about this some more, and I was thinking, maybe it's a cultural thing, because we are the USA, they are Ukraine. People from different parts of the world think differently. They believe in stuff differently. They have different perspectives on things. And I was wondering, is that part of the Ukrainian culture? When someone dies, we just forget about them and just leave them behind for good and never remember them again? Because if that's true, I honestly think that's the most fucked up thing ever. I mean, even today, it's September 11th, 2019 right now. You know what happened on September 11th, 18 years ago? Nearly 3,000 people died because I don't really want to explain it, because that's worthy of a whole new episode of Joe Winko Talk, honestly. 9/11 happened and 3,000 people died. Every single person who died in those towers, you can go to New York to the memorial, the 9/11 memorial, and find all of their names engraved on these giant pool tombstones. Even the victims of the Gainesville Ripper, you can find all of their names memorialized too. But why do they want to forget about the people killed by the Hammer Maniacs? I think they deserve to have some memorial for all of them too, whether it's online or in person. No memorial for them exists. As far as I know, no memorial for them exists. No one ever told me about it, and I'm pretty sure if there was a memorial for them, someone would have told me about it. It's just messed up, really. So I posted another post on Reddit. I was asking, not memorializing victims of tragedy, is it a culture thing with Ukraine or something? Because I just think that's so messed up that they want to forget about all the victims and that they don't want to memorialize them at all. And then people were typing in, you are not correct, Ukrainians are the same, there's a lot of memorials for people who got murdered and yada yada yada. And one person said, would you be so kind to provide an example of such the experience in Ukraine? And I did, and I typed in, sure, I'd love to. How about the 2007 Hammer Maniacs victims? Whenever I ask who they were, everyone gets pissed off and tells me to forget about it. If this would have happened in the USA, families and friends would have been coming forward left and right, never wanting their lost loved ones to be forgotten. Because it's true. Because if that would have happened in the USA, if two guys with hammers went on a killing spree in the USA, just like in my Sims 2 slasher movie, Carolina Maniacs, if two guys got hammers and went on killing sprees, you would see the names of all the victims all over the internet, all over the news. They would have remembered them. So I definitely think that it's a cultural difference, and that's what I wanted you guys to discuss in the comments. That's what I wanted us to discuss in the comments. Is it like a cultural difference between Ukraine and the USA? Because I'm very sure that it is. One person even left a comment. You want us to turn personal tragedies into the hot dumpster fire that is American media coverage? That's almost insulting. I'm sorry to break it to you, but the way your country treats such events is insane. Turning these soul-crushing incidents into a circus show is abhorrent. Aberrant. I never heard that word before. I don't know. Yes, we mourn. No, we do not do it the way you do. And then I typed in, of course, you just want to forget about murdered victims. Because it's true. I think that's fucked up and I think that's unfair. That these people were violently killed by these maniacs. Most of them were homeless. Most of them were children. The ones who were murdered by these maniacs. And everyone just wants to forget about them. And I just keep putting it as myself. What if I was one of the people who were killed by these hammer maniacs and everyone is trying to forget about me? I would be really pissed off about that. And I'm pissed off that they're trying to forget them too. Because it's not fair. But you know, I honestly think that's just how culture is in the Ukraine. When bad stuff happens, they just want to forget about the victims. Huh. And let me get back to Ukraine culture. So, this one person who was saying that I'm not correct and everything, they said, your country has much more liberal gun laws. For example, and then they post the gun laws for the state of Vermont, which probably have changed by now since one person threatened to do a school shooting, but whatever. And much more bigger population. There are much less maniacs or mass killers in Ukraine than in the USA. Okay, so, speaking of gun laws in the USA, let me elaborate on one thing, since you're bringing that up. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all about gun control and everything. I don't think they should be selling AR-15s that make your organs explode the moment a bullet hits you. I do believe in the Second Amendment, too, to a certain extent. Like, people think that just because you're all for gun control, that you're, like, completely anti-guns. That's not how I am. What you've seen happen in my Sims 2 horror movie, Carolina Maniacs, with the two serial killers of hammers on the loose in North and South Carolina, brutally slaughtering a whole bunch of people, there is no way in hell anything like that would ever happen in the USA, especially in North Carolina and South Carolina. Know why? Because people are armed in the USA. For an example, I remember when I went to Charlotte, North Carolina to film my YouTube video about the buildings in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I absolutely love Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been wanting to go back there for a long time, and I was so excited to be there. I was walking down that street, and this woman walked by. I didn't catch her on camera at all because I only try to catch myself on camera and Charlotte, North Carolina on camera because that's why I went there, not to catch the people on camera. This woman walked by. She looked like she was 5'2", 5'3", and she had blonde hair and blue eyes, and she was really pretty, and she looked like she was in her 20s. Not her early 20s like I am, but in her late 20s. Not her early 20s, but her late 20s. And I thought she was really pretty, and I looked at her, and I was looking at her. I probably didn't really notice how I was looking at her, but I was just looking at her, and I was like, oh, wow, that girl's really pretty. And I was like, oh, wow, she is pretty. She looked back at me. She noticed that I was looking at her, and she had this look on her face, and this is how she was looking back at me, like this. Exactly like this, like that. And then I was like, oh, whoa, the way she was looking at me, it wasn't a welcoming look. It was like that. And then I also noticed something else about her. Like, she was moving her arm a little bit. She wasn't like putting her hand on it, but she was moving her arm a little bit. And I looked down and I saw a gun hoister with a gun in it, and I was like, what the hell? And I was like, oh my god, she's armed. She's armed. She had a gun on her. And I was like, holy crap. And I wasn't like freaking out or anything. I was just like, I was just like, okay, just don't look at her. Just keep walking, because I did not want her pulling out a gun and blowing my brains out. I had so much footage to edit, and I wanted to live to edit that footage. So I was like, okay. Exercise your Second Amendment rights, but just don't exercise them on me, please. So I saw her walking around with a gun in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm not sure if she was I'm not sure if Charlotte, North Carolina has open carry laws, so I'm not even sure if it was legal for her to be carrying around that gun. But she was holding a gun. I definitely saw that. That's why the Carolina Maniacs, that's why it would never happen in the USA. Because imagine if she was out walking at night and these two guys with hammers saw her, two scary looking guys, no matter how big they are, and they said, hey, look at that woman. How about we attack her and kill her with these hammers? And if they would have ran up to her and tried killing her with hammers, she would have pulled out her gun and blew them to kingdom come. Literally. And you know, I'm glad she had a way to defend herself. Really. I'm glad she was walking around carrying a gun, because she needs a way to defend herself from crazy guys with hammers trying to harm her. And speaking of the victims from the Dnepropetrovsk Maniac, let me show you one of them right now. Let me show you this guy. And he's actually the one who was in the video, the one that they killed in the video that leaked out, that everyone saw. His name was Sergey. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He was 48 years old, and he had a wife. He was just out riding his bike one day, the same way I always do, the same way I always ride my bike. And these evil guys just decided to attack him, drag him in the woods, and beat him to death with a hammer, and decide to film it with their phones and everything. And just beat him for no reason, like he wasn't even human. Like he didn't have thoughts or feelings. Like he didn't have family that would miss him. And, you know, like he wasn't even someone. They just beat him to death horribly. And let me show you a picture of another person. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but I'll have it typed on the screen. This was the first person to be murdered by the Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs. She was a 33-year-old woman who was walking home after she was out having tea with her friends. This was her picture. That's her right there. She was really pretty. And she was... I don't know much about her, but from looking at that picture, she was probably really friendly, probably nice to everyone, and she was just walking home one night, and these two evil guys saw her walking home. She didn't even know them at all, and they just decided to just take hammers and just beat this poor woman to death for no reason, just because they thought it would be fun beating someone and killing them. And when I see this picture of her, I thought of that woman in Charlotte, North Carolina, who had the gun on her. And I was just thinking, what if this woman would have had a gun on her? What if she would have been armed with a gun, walking down the street, and these guys came up and tried beating her to death with hammers? She would have shot and killed both of these guys. And then you know what? 21 people would have still been alive. There would be no video of a guy getting dragged into the woods and beaten to death with a hammer. And there would be no sad wife holding a picture of her murdered husband. And my Sims 2 horror movie, Carolina Maniacs, well, there's a chance it could still exist. I mean, could have made it up on my own or something. I would have rather had that done instead of 21 people getting killed. But that's not what happened. 21 people are dead. Only a few of their names are remembered. And a bunch of angry people want them all to be forgotten. And it's not fair. It's not fair. So we see this woman. We see her face. We know her name. And we know what happened to her. And we will remember her. But what about all the others? They deserve to be remembered too. They don't deserve to be forgotten. I don't think anyone deserves to be forgotten. That's why I wanted to know the names of the Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs. And I think it's messed up, really, that that's the way the culture is in Ukraine. Just to forget people who died unfairly and for no reason. Now, I can't be 100% sure if that's really how Ukrainian people are, but that's just what I've been getting from this experience. So anyone who's from Ukraine who feels offended, don't be mad at me. But I feel bad for all those people. And it's not that I'm making fun of them or anything, or that I'm joking about them. No, I don't think it's funny at all that all these poor people were killed by these evil, fucked up guys with hammers. I wish that first girl would have had a gun, just like that pretty blonde girl I saw in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I wish she would have stopped all of them. Because it's a huge spoiler alert if you guys haven't seen Carolina Maniacs, but I'm going to spoil it anyway. If you want to skip the spoiler, I'll have a time code you can jump to on the screen. But in the end of my Sims 2 horror movie, Carolina Maniacs, unlike real life, when the real murderers got arrested, the killers at the end of Carolina Maniacs, they weren't arrested. They were killed. Because what happened in the movie was me and my adoptive sister were the last ones left. And they attack my adoptive sister. I thought that they killed her. And then I try to get away. They attack me too. Then the ghost of my biological uncle, Romario, appears. And he hands Bree a sniper rifle. And Bree kills both of the maniacs before they can kill me. She blows both of their heads off with the sniper rifle. And then me and her survive. And that's what happens. And it's not fair that the first victim of the Hammer Maniacs wasn't able to defend herself. I mean, and it wouldn't even necessarily have to be a gun. She could have used a stun gun or pepper spray. But is that stuff even legal to carry in Ukraine? Is it? In America it is, but in Ukraine is it? I don't know. My gut is telling me that it isn't, but I'm not sure. The messed up thing is, I just think it's really unfair that they want all the victims of the Hammer Maniacs to be forgotten about, and how everyone's just blowing it off on how it's not important, because if I was killed by a crazy guy with a hammer, I would want people to know who I was. Hell, I'd even want them to see pictures of my body after I was killed, because I'd want them to know what these fucked up people did, and how messed up and evil they are. That's just me specifically. I know not everyone would want that, but me specifically, I would want them to know exactly what they did to me, so they know how fucked up and evil these people were, and that these people belong in jail for killing these innocent people. So that's basically it for this episode of Joe Winko Talk. Sorry if I offended anyone, I guess, unless you threw the first punch. But what do you guys think of all this? And do you really think that it's a cultural thing, that people in Ukraine just want to forget about stuff like this? Because I'm pretty sure if something like this would have happened in the USA, well, I know for a fact if something like this would have happened in the USA, they would have all of the victims' names listed. I never in my life seen a mass murder or a serial killer who murdered a whole bunch of people and they didn't have the names of all the victims listed, because that's usually who they try to focus on right away. Sometimes they don't even say the killers' names because they don't want to remember the killers. They want to remember the victims. Exactly how it should be, so we know who we lost. And I just think it's messed up that Ukraine isn't like that. But what do you guys think of all this? Please let me know in the comments, and let's get a conversation started, because that's the whole point of all my YouTube videos. And I hope all the victims of the Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs, if I could say anything to all of them, I would just want to tell them that I'm sorry, that I wanted all of them to be remembered. And I also want to say, since it's September 11th right now, I want to say rest in peace all the 9/11 victims too, because that was another tragedy that happened. So that's basically it for this episode of Joe Winko Talk. Don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. So that's it. Peace out, people.